And we do, it's an Nietzsche thing, we value truth.
Yeah.
And if we allow people to make controversial claims without evidence, they're going to get it wrong. Like suppose Julie's little, typical Julie, my press secretary, and she's playing in the road, and I say, don't play in the road, and she said, oh, it's perfectly safe. It's a controversial claim. I say, well, why do you believe that? And she might say something stupid like, oh, I'm invulnerable to cars or whatever. And I say, why didn't I trust her, right? So you can see why. If I just let Julia believe whatever she wanted, she'd believe whatever is comfortable to believe, like it's safe to play in the road, and she wouldn't have a good survival rate, chances of survival. So you can see, in controversial belief, we demand people to have evidence, because it stops them believing things that are controversial but false. Well, there's nothing I can do about my wife with Arsenal. That's a fan problem. So you can see, and think about that, with everyday claims, like, I want to go to the beach, we don't get those wrong. You know what we want by and large. We can occasionally get them wrong, but by and large we get them right. So it would be strange to institute a practice of demanding evidence where there's not much need of evidence because we barely ever muck up. We barely ever get it wrong. But with controversial claims, people get it wrong all the time. And people go, oh, definitely Labour's going to win the next election. We want them to be a bit more sensitive to the evidence because otherwise they're going to get it wrong. And what you say is, well, I think there's a good probability that Labour will win, but if you actually look at the evidence, I can't be sure.
John, do you think you'd be comfortable kind of just like trying to brief some of the things you might, I'm not talking about the episode, things you were planning?
Yeah, I was going to kind of split it into 3 sections, and I was going to talk about an empiricist take on kind of partly, I guess, looking at hard evidence and whether you can actually know stuff if there isn't hard evidence for it.
So like the empiricist claim that it seems to look like everything needs evidence for it to be apart from it. Yeah, and then what else?
And then I was going to talk about rationalism, which would argue that
the rationalism there would be, so maybe this looks like we can know things without evidence as such.
yes,
Without empirical evidence.
Yeah, so it would involve, John, you think about exactly what might be by evidence. And what was going to go from there?
and then it was going to be talking about stuff like Pascal's wager and stuff that is evidence that's either just like yes or no.
Yeah, so we could talk about Pascal's wager as an example of...
Actually, Pascal's wager is really good. Pascal's wager is sometimes about, it's really about how belief doesn't count. Pascal's wager is about how you shouldn't always follow the evidence. Because the evidence is kind of like God doesn't exist, he admits. But he says, nevertheless, you should believe in God because of the benefits of doing it. A bit very Nietzsche. Where's my press agent going? I'm out of order. Okay. Jules, you put me off.
But you talk about Pascal's wager, how maybe this is like...
Oh, yeah. No, I gave this to my university, my first year university students, this really good case, and I was trying to argue this along the lines of Pascal's wager. There's an argument that actually belief and following the evidence isn't what you should always do. And here's the case. It's a really interesting case. There's a guy, this is actually a true case. He hears, this is in Texas, where there's lots of guns, he hears at 2 a.m. his car being wrecked in his driveway, and he goes to the window and he sees it driving off, right? He takes out his gun, it's a very sad story, he shoots, right? He believed it was a thief, right? Why he thinks it's okay to shoot thieves is another question, but in Texas it's okay. He shoots, he ends up killing the person. It's his daughter going to a snack room, okay? Now, there are some people who say, forget about belief, what we have to do is look at utility. The way utility means usefulness, and the way to do usefulness is this: you time your probability with the value of the outcome. Okay, so here's how I would be thinking in this case. Okay? Supposing I think it's 90% chance that it's a thief, and maybe the value of stopping a thief is 10. So my expected utility out of shooting is 0.9 times 10. It's 9, right? Think about, now, think that there's a 10% chance that it's someone I care about. what's the utility of shooting someone I care about? I'd say like minus $1 million. So that's 0.1 times minus $1 million. It's still really, you see what I mean? So it's small stuff.